It's called Footprints in the Sand, and it's a story of somebody who had a dream, and in the dream they're walking along a beach with God, and they're walking along and talking, and as they look behind them, or the dreamer looks behind, there are two sets of footprints in the sand. And as the dreamer looks further along these footprints, at one point they merge and there's only one set of footprints. And the dreamer thinks that's very strange. So the dreamer asks God, if we're walking along together and the two sets of footprints, how come sometime back down the track there was only one set of footprints? And God says to the dreamer, well, if you remember, at that time you were going through a very difficult period in your life. You were at a very low ebb, and at that point I was carrying you. So when I was saying earlier on that this love that's there, this peace, this Buddha nature, this God, it's always there, but often we don't realize it's there, and yet those universal everlasting arms are holding us. And as we gradually become more and more aware, then we begin to experience that we are being helped in our life, that we don't actually have to do this all on our own. But it does take effort. We have to be conscious. I mean, as Krishna Das was saying at the beginning of the video, he said, that love, it's always here. He said the trouble is we're not always here. And so it's this being present to ourselves. And this reminds me of another story. It's called The Rabbis in the Woods. Don't know if you've ever come across it. It's about a community of monks, and this community of monks, they've been there for hundreds of years, but now that community is dwindling. Really, it's just a few elderly monks and their abbot. And nearby in the woods is a little kind of hut, a little retreat place that the local rabbi has built. And from time to time, the rabbi will go into the woods and go into his little hut to retreat from his particular congregation. Needs quiet time for himself. Now the monks who live nearby, because of their spiritual practices, they've become quite psychic, so they are aware of the rabbi's presence in the woods. They can feel the rabbi's presence. And one day the monks are with their abbot and they're talking about the state of affairs, that they can see that their monastery is going to just fade away to nothing. And then one of them says to the abbot, I know, he said, maybe the rabbi can tell us what to do. Next time the rabbi is in the woods, perhaps you could go down and have a word with him. And so the abbot thinks, well, we've got nothing to lose here. So the next time the rabbi is in the woods and they sense the rabbi's presence, the abbot goes down and knocks on the door of the little hut, and the rabbi lets him in. And they sit down and they talk about their respective communities. And to some extent, the rabbi can also empathize with the abbot that, the spiritual community isn't what it was. And they sit there and contemplate some passages from the Torah. And the abbot realizes that he's not getting an answer. He's not any further forward. And he's just leaving. And he looks at the rabbi. He said, are you sure there's nothing you can tell me? And the rabbi said, not really. He said, the only thing I know is that one of you is God. So the abbot is a bit perplexed by that. So he says goodbye and goes back to the monastery. And all the monks gather round and they said, well, what did the rabbi tell you? And he said, well, not very much. He said, we sat there and kind of commiserated with one another and wept a little. And then I was leaving. And then he said, oh, but one of you is God. So that was the end of the meeting with the abbot and the monks. But each monk began to think, maybe if the rabbi is right and one of us is God, well then what? And so one of the monks was thinking about one of the others, Brother Eldred, very pious monk. He thought, maybe he could be God. And then he was thinking about Brother Matthew, who was always very quiet and a bit standoffish. And he thought, well, I suppose it's possible he could be God. And then the monk thought to himself, maybe I'm God. And all the monks were having a kind of similar process. So very gradually, because they thought that each other might be God, and that they might also be God, they began to treat one another with a little more respect. And gradually that respect grew to love. And gradually that grew to create the most wonderful, luminous atmosphere in the monastery. And people from the nearby town who would come to visit the forest would sometimes visit the monastery. And as time went by and visitors came to the monastery, many of these visitors were touched by this luminosity, by this light that was in that monastery. And then, some years later, a few young men were so touched by that light, that presence they felt, that they joined to become monks, and gradually the community began to grow. So, are you kind of catching on now to the way this works? One of you is God. And of course, as you saw on the video, these teachers are telling us that we're not one human family, we're one human being. There is no separation. We are absolutely one at our core. But of course the problem is, we feel and think that we're separate. And so much out there in life reinforces that feeling of separation. But you've seen and heard a number of things on that video where other beings have actually felt that there is that oneness. Now, I'm not just telling you my opinion or what I've read. I've had several experiences of this. One time I was in a hotel in Liverpool, and I'd gone there for 2 business meetings. And when I got up in the morning, I would always meditate before going down to breakfast. And this was a fairly routine thing. My meditation has gone into some seriously bleak places. It's just like brushing my teeth. It doesn't have that passion that I know is necessary for spiritual growth. So I got up, I think I showered, got dressed, then I sat down to meditate, just in a kind of very automatic way. And I'd hardly started my mantra, and I was aware of this. It's difficult to describe it, but the best word is love. I was absolutely bathed in this love, and I had this kind of bifocal vision, as it were. I was bathed in this love, but I also had a kind of witness consciousness that was saying, I could sit here for the rest of time. I can just sit here and sit here in this energy. It was just beyond description. And then this witness consciousness was saying, you need to go and have breakfast, you've got 2 business meetings. So I kind of wrenched myself out of it. And I went to my first business meeting and I just met one man I'd never met before and was discussing some proposals that his company had put to my company, etc. And we agreed to meet 6 weeks later. So then I drove to the next business appointment and I had pretty much the same sort of interaction with one other person and an agreement to meet when I was next in Liverpool. And that was that. 6 weeks later, I go back to Liverpool and I go to the first business meeting where it had been agreed that this person would get some of his other colleagues to come to the meeting so that we could start to kind of hack out some sort of proposal. And when I went into the room and sat down, the guy who I'd seen 6 weeks earlier, his boss was there, and he said to me, I don't know what you said to, whatever the chap's name was, he said, I don't know what you said to him, but he said, he was so insistent that we all saw you. And I thought, that's terrific. And so we had our meeting and came to whatever conclusion it was, and I left. I went to the second meeting, and again, there's a number of people who come there, and again, this person's boss, who I'd seen last time, who again I'd never met, said, my colleague said that we really needed to meet you. It's vital. And so again we had this meeting, and that was fine. And it's a fairly long drive back to London from Liverpool, so I had about 4 or 5 hours in the car to think. And and I was thinking, the reaction of these people that I met about meeting me, I thought this is disproportionate because this is just an ordinary business meeting. This was of no real consequence. And then I remembered that 6 weeks earlier I'd had that love experience and I'd gone to meet these two individual people and I could see what had happened. Although we'd met and spoke about ordinary, mundane things, something of that love experience had rubbed off on them because they were so insistent that their colleagues meet me, and there was no logic to it. And actually nothing fantastic came out of this. But what I could see was that an experience that I had had that was really quite kind of numinous had actually connected with somebody else who had no idea that I meditated or anything else. And the only sense that they could make of whatever experience they had was to say to their colleagues, you really should meet this person. So that was one experience I had. A similar experience I had, again, this love, was my daughter had a baby, and the baby was, I don't know, a few weeks old, and she said to me, can you hold him whilst I do something? And so I held this baby, and as I was holding this baby, I was once again flooded with that same quality of love. It was so powerful. It's like, okay, I mustn't drop him. And when I asked a spiritual teacher who I have profound respect for, I said, what happened? And the teacher said, well, everything that comes from creation has come from that love. And for a while, with a fairly young child, that energy is still kind of there to be felt, and you felt it. And then the final experience I had with this was in a kind of a less kind of auspicious way. I was in an Indian restaurant with two friends, and one of these friends, his sister, had died of cancer recently. And he was telling us how he had been in the room in the hospital with his sister as she gradually left the body. And he was telling us over our vegetable biryani that how the room was flooded with love. And I was sitting there eating my food, and I was flooded with love, absolutely flooded. And this is in an Indian restaurant in London, it's noisy, there's everybody around. I was completely flooded. And you know, I said to this person, I said, I can feel what you felt. And then it went. So these experiences, for me, are kind of like, they're like carrots on the end of a piece of string. They keep encouraging me to go forward. And that's not for some kind of selfish reason. I can just sit on my meditation cushion and be bathed in love and not bother about anybody else. But it shows me that if, like those monks, I begin to treat myself better, and if I begin to treat everybody else better, a magical thing happens. You know, the world that I experience actually is different. And the only reason it's different is because, in this case, I decide to act differently. And that's really the only choice we have in life. I mean, we have this idea that, you know, we're born with free will. Well, we can't decide what sort of weather we're going to have. We can't decide if the train's going to run on time. There's loads of things that we have no free will over. But the one thing we do have control over is how we deal with things that happen in our life. Maybe we can affect the thing that is happening, but maybe we can't, because usually when something is happening to us in life, it involves other people. And you've probably all had the experience that it's very difficult to control other people. But we can control ourselves. But that takes awareness, and it takes a good heart, and it takes loads and loads of practice. You know, from my own experience, I get it wrong, but I don't stop, I just try again. And by constantly working on how I deal with things that happen to me in life, gradually my experience of life becomes easier. I don't mean that it's less bumpy, but the Buddha said, you know, pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. You know, the pain occurs, but what we do with it is our own individual choice. Because if we remember that the texture of existence is love, you know, those footprints in the sand, that if we are open, we can experience being held, then, you know, our life becomes more and more peaceful. But it isn't free of challenges. I think people often think with the spiritual path that if they do lots of meditation, read lots of holy books and become a good person, that it's like a bargain with existence, that you'll be kind to me. And that's just a misunderstanding. The true understanding is that, yes, if you do all those things, then whatever it is that existence is throwing at you, you deal with in a way that makes it easier for you. And this is what Gurudev was saying on the video. So, you know, we are actually powerful beings, but we have to experience that we are being held by a power that is greater than our individual self. And as long as we keep saying, okay, I can fix it myself, you know, creation is very kind. It responds to us in exactly that manner. Okay, you think you can fix it yourself, you fix it yourself. One example from my life is that when I was much younger, I started suffering with panic attacks. Anybody here ever had a panic attack? Yeah, they're great fun, aren't they? They're just terrific on a crowded tube or in an office with your colleagues and you're having a panic attack and you want to run out of the room. Awful, awful experience. So my solution to that was I would go to the doctor, and the doctor gave me Valium. Now, I didn't know, but Valium for some people is highly addictive. And luckily, I was one of those people who could be addicted to Valium. So it wasn't long before I discovered I had two problems. I was having panic attacks in inappropriate situations, and I couldn't leave the house without a pocket full of Valium tablets, because when I tried to stop taking the Valium, I actually had even more panic attacks than I'd had when I didn't have the Valium. So I was in a pretty awful place, and I won't kind of go into all the intricacies of the story, but I decided to go and see a psychiatrist who decided to give me more wonderful drugs, some of which were addictive too, and then I went to group therapy and lots of things, and ultimately something in me said, you need to pray for help. So I stood in my bedroom and I said, please God, if there is a way out of this mess, you show me, I'll do it. And then I waited, for the door to fly open or the curtains to be blown out of the window. Nothing happened. But a few days later, I saw a poster on the tube station advertising the School of Meditation, and something in me said, that's what I need to do. And then I remembered an uncle of mine was doing Hatha Yoga. And I thought, yes, I'll do Hatha Yoga. So this was back in the 70s, and I joined a yoga class in Richmond in London, and all the women in the class wore leotards. This is what you wore in a yoga class in the 70s. And I was there in my football shorts. And at the end of the yoga, Hatha Yoga, there was a little bit of meditation, and something in me said, this is what I need, this is what I need. And then I found somebody who's teaching meditation, and that's why I'm kind of here today. So the prayer was answered when Richard finally gave up with Richard's solutions, which was going to the medical profession. And I'm not knocking them, they were doing their best, but there was something else that was needed. And what was needed was for me to finally say, okay, I surrender to a higher will, you show me what to do. And really from that time on, that has really been my main spiritual practice, is you show me, I'll do it. And if I can't do it, give me some help. Because the thing about spiritual life isn't about becoming more, it's actually about becoming less. It's actually me getting out of my way. But of course you have to go through, or at least I had to go through a whole lot of stuff to realise that it was about being less. When I became a minister and I'd done all the studies, oh great, I'm a minister now, I can go and do weddings, and I've achieved something, I've got somewhere. And then, as time went on, gradually, the universe showed me, no, you haven't got somewhere. You actually misinterpreted it. It's about becoming less. But from the ego's point of view, becoming less is not a very attractive option. In fact, I once heard somebody say that from the ego's point of view, spiritual life is one insult after another. But when you think about it, the less we become, the freer we are. And as Gurudev was saying, if you've got all these things, that's how far you are from God. When you've only got this number of things, you're far closer. And Gurudev wasn't talking about material possessions, he's really talking about our attitude. It's fine to have money, but if the money has you, then that's not fine. And so it's about our attitude. So how are you doing with this? How are you doing with this? Bit too controversial? Not terribly attractive?
No, I personally find it helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's kind of timely for me where I'm on my journey. I think I used to struggle a lot with listening to some of the gurus talking, and then trying to make it apply very much to my life. And my life is not their life. So I've sort of now realised that you kind of, for me, I take what resonates and make it work with my very modern life. You know, I work in the media and work kind of crazy hours, so it's, you know, I do meditate and I'm a yoga teacher as well, but I have to sort of kind of walk the middle ground, and I think now that's what I've realised. It's okay to sort of be vulnerable and trying to get that, you know, and also to know who you are, because we're all totally different and we all have different needs, but ultimately we are divine beings at our core. But I think also what I've realised is, you know, the more I understand how I work in this world, the more productive I am for myself and those around me. So, you know, I think it's, but ultimately it is all now. But within it is quite complex. You know, the human existence is quite complex. So I'm just trying to get the balance between the kind of purity of my spiritual path and balancing myself as a human being with my human needs. And yeah.
It's a journey of integration.
Yeah.
That's what I found. I used to kind of go to the office and be an office being, and then go to yoga things, spiritual things, and be a spiritual being. And over many years I realised actually it's a synthesis of the two, that if I bring my spiritual life into my office life, and that's not that I start telling people they should pray or anything, but just actually treating people decently. And, you know, it makes such a difference. It makes such a difference. In fact, I always used to pray before every business meeting. I would always say, please may this be for the best for everybody here. Not, please make this business meeting really successful for me. It's like, no, yeah, that's a trap. It's like, you know, may we all benefit, may we all benefit. And what I noticed was the meetings I had where I forgot to do that, something often was missing from them. So, yeah, well, that's great. And the thing is, we have to start somewhere. I think sometimes we can kind of disempower ourselves by thinking that we really have to kind of hit the ground running. And you know, that just isn't realistic. You just start with some new knowledge that you found from a spiritual teacher, you apply it, you see what works, you see what doesn't work, and you move from there.
And also, you listen to what's inside. I think that's what I've learned. It's incredibly important. You know, I find a lot of value coming to spaces like this, listening, and also books. You know, there's always been amazing books throughout my life, which I feel very blessed for. But there's a Rumi quote, which is, I stopped asking the teacher, you know, and I went inside, and that's, I think, what, you know, I've learned to listen to my own soul, I guess, a lot of the time. And that's, you know, because we can give our power away quite easily. We have all the wisdom inside of us. It's often just, sometimes we need it reflected on the outside, but yeah, I think there's something quite lovely about being able to go, actually, I trust my heart on this one, and so seeking inside as well as out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, seeking the guru inside.
Absolutely. I mean, any guru worth their salt will tell you that the job of the outer guru is to awaken the inner guru. I mean, the first thing that Swami Satchitananda said to me when I met him privately, he said, pointing to himself, he said, "This body will go." He said, "You know, don't mistake me for the teachings. The teachings are eternal." He said, "Me, I'm just a signpost. I'll be gone." And so so thank you for saying that. That is so true. It's the inner guru. Yeah. How are you doing, our friend from Ulverston?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm listening very acutely. I was intrigued with what you were saying about feeling what's going on inside you. And I've had experiences where we communicate with others in ways we have no comprehension of what's going on. We don't know we're doing it, but there is that link between us. Sometimes what we feel inside is not us. It's the people around us or the person we're with. It's intriguing, this universality that we think we're feeling what we feel, but actually we may be feeling what somebody else around us is feeling.
Yes, if your mind is very quiet, you can often pick up what other people are feeling or thinking. And also if you're very psychic, you can pick that up. I was in a petrol station a while back, and there was a queue of people, to pay for their fuel, and I was just standing there, and really my mind was just it was just ticking over. I wasn't thinking of anything, and then the number 6 came into my mind, and it would go out 6, 6, 6, 6. And I thought, what's that about? And the woman in front of me then said to the cashier, "Pump number 6." And I thought, I picked up her thought, just because the mind was empty.
We're all one.
Absolutely.
It's all energy.
Yeah. Any questions? Do you think you can take anything away from tonight and use in your life?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Could I just say something I just thought of earlier on, really, when you were saying about how we, with the spiritual path, we really need to work at it, and it's something that we need to be kind of develop a real consciousness and awareness of what's happening and what's happening around us. But I remember once I went for a yoga class, and I arrived in a rush, as I often did or do still sometimes. Lots of things happening at home. Somebody made a demand on me just as soon as I was ready to go out the door, and so I ended up running, arriving there in a fluster. And when I got there, my yoga teacher was there, this wonderful person, and I sort of said, blah, 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 this happened, blah, blah, blah. I was in a rush. And he said, you don't have to struggle. You choose to struggle. And it was just such a moment for me, because in a way, it's sort of, I just suddenly let out this huge sigh. And it was as though, it was in a way one of those moments where, and hearing what you say today, maybe the moment was actually him saying, you don't have to take it all on your shoulders. And there is an energy, or there is whatever that will actually help you along, in that way. But I remember thinking that, and it was very powerful, that I actually didn't have to struggle. But maybe that was part of my sort of awareness as well. Yeah.
So how are you doing with it now?
I repeat that to myself a lot. I don't have to struggle, and I find it very comforting, and it is a sensation of sort of being carried in a way, supported. But I still feel it's something I'm not fighting, but it's something I'm continually challenged with. That I don't have to do all on my own. That perhaps there is something else that is guiding and giving strength.
Yeah, it's practicing connecting with it more and more.
And also, do you know the saying, angels can fly because they take themselves lightly? That resonates with me so much now, because I got very heavy with my spiritual path, and it was like very dense. I probably wasn't very fun to be around, and I find a lot of people who inspire me are quite light, and when you look at the gurus, they're very light, and Dalai Lama, and a lot of sort of they laugh a lot, and so that sort of has helped me change my course quite a lot. Actually, don't take yourself too seriously. don't take it all too seriously. And obviously there are moments where you do need to take things seriously, and we've all probably had those, but really, a lot of the time, I think it's working with kids as well. They're in the moment, they laugh a lot, they're very real, very open-hearted. If they feel sad, they'll tell you. If they bought something new and they like the new shoes, they'll tell you. They're kind of they're my gurus now, because they just don't get caught up in the the analysing that we do as adults. Like, oh, should we do this? They're just beings of light, little fun beings, and they're real. And I guess if I'm thinking of the world as a vibration, there's a lot of heaviness in the world with the wars and the fighting. The best thing I can do is lighten my vibration as much as possible to try and balance the dark. So,
Rather than taking things seriously, there's another word we can substitute that, which is taking things sincerely. And that gives it that lighter quality.
Yeah, and you still care. You need to care about things.
You need
it's not
to
saying you don't care.
No.
But it's just the attitude is a sort of light one, a light conscious one.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I've been very lucky to spend time with people like Swami Satchitananda and a few others, and they have this childlike quality. I mean, it's not childishness, but it's this real there's a playfulness, but not in any kind of trivial way. There's an openness. I mean, it's described in some traditions as beginner's mind. They're always seeing everything afresh. If somebody comes to talk to them, they give them their full attention. They're completely there in that moment. Okay, well, we can move now to the closing slokas and the arti, mindful of time. Does anybody need a copy of the closing slokas, Maha? So which one are you about? 41. Yeah. If any of you have got a closing sloka sheet which has sloka 41 on it, that one we will be missing out. Sarvesham swastir bhavantu, Sarvesham shantir bhavantu, Sarvesham purnam bhavatu, Sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. Auspiciousness be unto all, perfect peace be unto all, fullness be unto all, prosperity be unto all. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pasyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhavet. Happiness be unto all, perfect health be unto all. May all see good in everyone. May all be free from suffering. Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya,
Mrityormamritam Gaya. Lead us from unreal to real. Lead us from darkness to the light. Lead us from the fear of death to knowledge of immortality. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That is full, this also is full. This fullness came from that fullness. Though this fullness came from that fullness remains forever full. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Punatu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinadvatitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May God protect us, grant us wisdom's fruit. May we gain energy to know the truth. May our intellects grow clear and bright. May we cherish no ill feeling toward anyone. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Purvarukamiva Bantanam Mrityor Mukshya Mamritat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We worship the all-seeing One, fragrantly nourishes bounteously. From fear of death may you cut us free, to realize immortality. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Right, now we all stand for the arati, which is the light offering.
Jyoti 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 Swayam Jyoti 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 Param Jyoti 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 Arum Jyoti 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 Shivam Vama Jyoti Soma Jyoti Vana Jyoti Yana Jyoti Maha Jyoti Yoga Jyoti Vata Jyoti Nada Jyoti Ema Jyoti Vyoma Jyoti Eru Jyoti Viru Jyoti Eka Jyoti Eka Jyoti Eka Jyoti Jyoti Light, O light of self-effulgence, light, O light of absoluteness, light, O light of gracefulness, light, O light of auspiciousness, light of Shiva, light of moon, light divine, light of wisdom, light of heaven, light of yoga, light of wind, light of sound, lighty light, light of water, rising light, vital light, the only light, the only light, give us light, O light of lights. Prakrite Swabhavat Karomi Adyat Sakalam Parasmai Guru Varayati Sambarhayami. Whatever actions I may perform, impelled by the forces of nature, by body, word, mind, senses, intellect, soul, I offer to the feet of my Satguru Dev.
Now the final sloka we're doing, it's like final prayer. When we do the English, may the entire creation, if we can really say that with extra meaning, because we're living in a world right now that needs as much peace and joy, so we can really say this from our hearts. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. And may the light of truth overcome all darkness.
Victory to that light.
Jai Shri Satguru Maharaj Ki Jai. So finally, we come round with some prasad, which is blessed food. So thank you to people who kindly provided this, the wonderful bakers amongst us.